when you bring somebody on, you need to take care of that person. You need to pay attention. You can't just delegate, set it and forget it. It's not one of those deals. You better be very well involved, both in the instructions that you give and the follow-up.
Welcome back to the Sterling Family Law Show, the podcast designed to help family attorneys build the firm of their dreams. My name is Tyler Dolph. I am your host, as well as the CEO of our family law firm only marketing consultancy called Rocket Clicks, that was born out of our very own family law firm, Sterling Lawyers, that has grown to over 27 attorneys. Today, we continue our owner-operator series, and we have a friend of the show, as well as a client of Rocket Clicks, Michael Gjesdahl of Gjesdahl Law in Fargo, North Dakota. He has an 8-attorney firm. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. This episode might sound a little bit different because we actually know each other quite well. But Michael, for those of us that don't know you, would you please introduce yourself and your firm to our lovely audience?
Well, good to see you, first of all. My practice is located on the border of North Dakota and Minnesota. We're in Fargo-Moorhead, which is a market of about 200,000 people. So I guess I regard it as sort of a mid-sized market, surrounded by a lot of rural. And I think my practice is uncommon in a market like this in that it's presently 8 attorneys, all of whom practice exclusively family law. We have friends down in Minneapolis, which is about 3 hours away from us. And I look around at that market and I do not see other 8-attorney firms. So I'm sort of proud that we've grown to that size. Family law for us is broad spectrum. Adoption, we're one of two firms in the state that handles assisted reproductive technology cases. And of course, the bulk of our work is divorces of every stripe. We will represent people from the deepest, darkest recess of the trailer park. And we have the wealthiest people in the state of North Dakota. And little known fact, there's plenty of wealth in North Dakota with the oil fields and the farm. Every farm divorce is $10 to $15 million, and we're the firm that those folks come to see.
I love it, Michael. How'd you get your start? Why North Dakota? Why family law? Give us some backstory.
Well, I was born and raised right along the borderline of Minnesota and North Dakota, so this is home territory. That probably explains more than any other reason why I'm here. Why family law? It wasn't intentional. It was more desperation than anything else. Fresh out of law school, while I was in law school, I clerked in a downtown LA products liability firm. Wonderful experience for a small town kid.
I was going to say, going into LA.
And then fresh out of law school, I went to San Francisco and worked in a medical malpractice, mostly defense firm during the AIDS years. And so it was medical products cases involving the makers of a product that hemophiliacs used for clotting purposes. And so it was the height of the AIDS litigation, which is now ancient history. But the time sort of went by. It was time to come home. Had some family issues. Dad had cancer, and it just seemed like God was saying, go home. It's time to go home. So came back and threw out a shingle. And I did anything and everything that came my way. As it turns out, I like to buy groceries and eat. And so if it came to the door, that's the kind of attorney I was. And after a couple of years went by, I just noticed that my cabinet was full of divorce cases. So it's not that I intentionally became a divorce attorney or family law attorney. It sort of happened. And as it turns out, it was, I think there might have been a little bit of fate that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
So good. I love it. Was there a inflection point? You had started your firm, you were doing everything for everyone to pay the bills, which is totally understandable. Was there a moment when you said, okay, I'm going to double down and I'm going to go exclusively family? I'm going to change my website or change the narrative? Like, do you remember, do you recall, like, was there a pivotal moment or it happened over a series of months?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Tyler, that I've been doing this long enough that I was pre-website.
That's
When I was
right.
in law
Yeah,
school,
sure.
it wasn't a computer world; it was a book world, and so um, my inflection point um, sort of coincided with very early websites, early cheesy, poorly done, cheaply manufactured websites. So I had one of those, but it was still a Yellow Pages world, which to somebody starting a firm today just isn't going to relate to that origin story very well. Um, but there was a time where I just decided I'm going to commit. I'm going to pick a lane instead of being a generalist, and where you're jack of all trades and master of none. I was in an office share arrangement, and the people that I was with, they were the kinds of people who were doing everything and really mastered nothing. And so early on, I decided this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to develop a depth of expertise and focus on excellence as best I could. And in those early years, it was really hard because I didn't have a mentor. And so looking back on those days, I learned lessons the hard way. And the application is that today I don't want my associates to learn by mistakes. I want them to be well mentored and have the benefit of borrowed wisdom as much as they can. And so I think by having a mentor, you can sort of accelerate your learning curve. I will tell you that it is not hard after you've developed some experience to identify in your opponent whether they are a mentored attorney or an unmentored attorney. It is apparent, and judges will say the same thing, that they can easily spot the people who have somebody to lean on and learn from, and the others who are just out there floundering and on their own. It is that obvious.
What do you believe the power of a mentor does, and why should a young attorney think about getting a mentor right now?
I don't know if this is the most direct answer to your question, but I have a son-in-law, for example, who is in his residency right now down at Mayo, and I look at the the learning model that the medical industry provides and always has. There's a couple of years of intense classroom learning, and then very quickly the medical model is to put people into a practical. I mean, they're in clinics and practices and hospitals, and for years they are out in a real life environment learning their craft. And it's sort of the old school. If you went back to the 1700s and you were a candle maker, you know, you would sit with an experienced candle maker and you learn how to make candles. But that is not our model. We go through our classroom learning, and then we are released into the wilds. And and every law school graduate passes the bar, and then they start their practice and they have that epiphany that, holy smokes, I don't know as much as I thought I knew. So um, I don't know. I think we're sort of missing out a little bit on that experiential passing of wisdom that a lot of other industries take advantage of.
I have to believe that your time in LA and San Francisco gave you some context before you ended up starting your own firm.
It maybe not in the way that you think, but I worked in LA in a pretty big firm. It was like 60 attorneys or so, and the one in San Francisco was 15 to 20. So, and from a Fargo, North Dakota perspective, those were big firms. In those environments, they were maybe boutique-y. But your early lessons are ingrained and stick with you. And so all I knew was how to practice in a firm that had sort of big firm formalities, procedural formalities. And I think today that's one of the things that has always set me apart. Even when I was a solo, um, I practiced a model that reflected more of a big firm approach than a small town approach, and there is a difference. So I've always respected the formalities that big firms have learned. Um,
So you were a solo, doing everything to anything that would come in the door. You then decided to pivot and say, "Okay, I'm going to focus on family law." At what point did you end up hiring your first attorney, and what was that experience like going from kind of a me leader to having to duplicate yourself and become more of a we leader?
Again, I was in just because it was the cheapest, easiest way to get underway. I joined an office share. And the other five attorneys in the group did not have a growth mindset. They were just guys who sort of kept their heads down and they did the daily grind of practicing law, and they weren't thinking about growth. Um, I don't think I'd even practice a year before I'll say, hired my first half-time paralegal, and that was a big stretch to have a half-time. Um, and went from there. I was probably a couple of years in before I hired another attorney, and I always think of that leap as like a single cell organism, doubling. So your first hire is oh boy, it's a big reach when you're doubling the size of your firm. And that's a hard leap. Today, with eight attorneys, I can bring on a ninth and hardly notice it. It's hardly a blip on the bottom line. But that first big leap is a hard one to make. And you can do it in different ways. You could do it as a hire, or maybe easier to do as a partnering. But that comes with a different set of issues. When you partner, you're marrying.
That's
So
right. Yeah,
you
you're
got to
signed
do
up
it
for
well.
forever. That's right. So, what did you learn in those early days of having to delegate and build process that didn't involve you having to do everything?
Um, One of my favorite words or overused words is intentionality, or being intentional. And so when you bring somebody on, you need to take care of that person. You need to pay attention. You can't just delegate, set it and forget it. It's not one of those deals. You better be very well involved, um, both in the instructions that you give and the follow up. Um, I think aligning in values is something that I may have missed in the early years, and I've learned over the course of time that um, to have there's something to the cadence that you derive from values, and an alignment, and just the syncing up with somebody that eliminates a lot of problems. And I wish I had that understanding much sooner. And a little bit of that is knowing yourself, knowing who you are. It involves some introspection and examination. Um, in recent years, we've been able to hire leadership mentors who come in and have helped us understand ourselves more than I was able to at a younger juncture. But even without the resources to hire somebody like that, you can just give it some thought, and it is worth the thought that you give to just know, for example, am I just in this for the money? Do I want to make all of my decisions with that as my lead thought? Or am I missional? Am I doing this for the betterment of humanity and for the feeling that it gives my heart? And that's a pretty easy question to ask yourself and find direction in.
So good. Yeah, we talk about we use the term shared fate a lot around here. We akin it to more of a sports analogy, right? If everyone is aligned on winning the championship this year, then every piece of feedback we give each other, as long as we all understand that we're trying to get to the championship, then the feedback isn't personal. It's in an effort to help us get better so we can get to the playoffs and go to the championship. And having that shift or that lens has really helped our team grow with each other because now we have this shared fate. We're all in it together.
Yeah, I've become just a believer in a strategic plan and a vision and values, and the things that you read about in leadership books, and you can sort of slough them off. That just is, um, you know, I don't know if that really matters to me, but believe me, it does.
100%. I totally agree. So you went from hiring your first part-time associate, doubling your firm, to now having 8 attorneys, which is amazing growth for where you are and the focus firm that you have. Are there a few things that you've learned along the way that have really helped you take that leap, to go from a single to 2 attorneys, 3 attorneys, now to 8? What do you think has allowed you to be successful?
My very um, sort of blindered kind of focus when I go back to my origins was, I just want to be the best at this. I just want to be the best. I want to be the best. And so my focus was very narrow. Just learn my craft and do this job the best that I can. Um, I wasn't really marketing that intensely or well. My thought was just, if you do it well, they will come, kind of. And it worked over time, but I think a more intentional marketing approach would have been an accelerant that, um, in retrospect, would have helped my growth happen faster. Not that I don't really have any regrets for, I've been at this now for 36 years, so it's taken 36 years to go from 1 to 8, and that's just fine. But it could have been faster if that had been a goal of mine. It's really been more evolutionary that, as people have come, as the business has come, I've grown with it. So um, yeah, it's been more evolutionary than intentional, my growth. But I always have had a growth mindset. So if the guys that I was in with 36 years ago, those 5 guys, um, they not a one of them ever took on an associate or ever a partner. They were the kinds of attorneys that just showed up. They had some cases, they worked their cases, and that's where their focus was. They never wanted to grow. I've always wanted to grow. I still want to grow. You know, in 10 years, I hope my firm is 16
Yes.
attorneys.
Yeah, I was going to say, as we're closing up, tell us about the future. But I mean, you said it, right? It's continuing to double down on what's working and continue to grow your firm, which is awesome.
Yeah, where I think we're going, and I think we're probably late to the party, um, is that my firm is still a billable hour firm, and we haven't jumped on the flat fee approach yet. And so I think that's the next hill that we need to climb. And I think if we can, crack the code of flat fee, profitable flat fee um, practice, I think that's going to really fuel our growth. I think that's where we're going to be heading, and where the demographics of our industry are heading. It's harder and harder for people to afford us, and so my model really points me towards a smaller and smaller segment of the market. As my hourly rate increases, there are fewer and fewer people who can afford us. So I think a family law practice needs to get on the bandwagon with flat fee billing.
I'll tell you, we at Rocket Clicks, and since we have Sterling and built flat fee there, we've worked with a few billable hour firms to help them institute flat fee. And the amount of changes required is surprising to them, because everything in your firm has to change. The way you talk to people, the way you do intake, the way you sell, the way you manage the case. Everything's built on efficiency to do it right. And so, yeah, I would love to continue that conversation as you go through that journey, and watch the evolution continue.
Yeah, it's intimidating because flat fee doesn't really fit our values so much. We have concerns that it's sort of a mill approach where you're just pumping them through as fast as you can, which is not necessarily our identity. But our hope is that it doesn't sort of overtake our entire culture, that we can fold it into who we are.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. Michael, I really appreciate your time today, your story, your insights. Wishing you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Tyler. Take care.